Hello and welcome to the Navy Blue Corner. I'm Ian, joined as always by my good mate Lockie. And just like that, our season has come to an end in one of the worst performances of the season. It was a sad end to a year that showed so much promise. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot to discuss as we head throughout all this episode. Unpack our elimination final loss to the Brisbane Lions. Lockie, what do you even say? What do you even say after that loss? Not something good to ask for a podcast that will inevitably still go for an hour and a half. But it was almost a case in that game that everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. How have you been reflecting on that loss?
It's been a roller coaster of reflections. I think I've experienced so many different emotions throughout that game and then since in the days that have followed. So I kind of want to preface the thoughts that I'm going to give on this podcast. I very well could be laying in bed straight after this and be thinking the exact opposite because I've thought so many different things in the wake of this.
Yeah, it was brutal. Yeah, I mean, we were chatting a little bit before we jumped on that we're asking each other, what's the vibe like? Are we really angry? How are we feeling?
What are we coming in with here?
Exactly. And I think we both were very similar, which who knows if this is the right way to process it all. But when that was all playing out, particularly that second quarter, both of us were, it was that like, if you don't laugh, you cry kind of rhetoric
100%.
around it and just trying to do something to cheer yourself up, trying to watch that abysmal performance. And look, this episode is just going to be, we're going to try our hardest to keep it to the Brisbane game itself because this is not our last episode of the year. There is plenty of content to come. Yep. You know, I'm big on the off season, the trades, the draft. So we're going to be back here with a lot more episodes to come in the year. And so we've also got our season review episode coming up. So that's why we'll try to not get into those big picture topics and reflecting on the season as it was in this episode, because that's coming up. We're going to try and look at just the Brisbane Lions games. And look, this is a tough question to answer that I'm going to throw at you, Lockie, but because so many things that went wrong in this game. But if you were to pinpoint one thing that maybe frustrated you the most from our loss and how the game went wrong, what would it be for you, Lockie?
Wow. All right, I'm gonna put something out there, and you may not have seen this coming from me, but I was feeling pretty optimistic before this game, and I've heard this kind of rhetoric from people in the reviews of this saying that we were never a chance to win this, no matter what, no matter who we put out there on the field, who was the sub, what game plan we went in with, those kind of things. Brisbane were just gonna get us in the end. And you know what? I don't know if hindsight's 2020, but I'm starting to believe that.
That's interesting. I mean, trying to reflect back in my thoughts going into the game, I think a lot of people were asking me, how do you think Carlton will go? And I think my answer was always the same, which was, I'm not confident, but we're there, so we're a chance. And that maybe tells you everything you need to know about this. Our form leading up to it, the injuries that had built to that point. We weren't playing any football that resembled a finals team that can go up there and beat Brisbane. Last year, we were flying, playing the best football we possibly could, on a roll, had the confidence up. We still couldn't beat Brisbane over there. Arguably, Brisbane were also playing better football than this season. So why do we necessarily think we were going to go over there and get it done? Now, we're fans, so we're always going to be hopeful and think that way. But I guess there is that point to agree with you in thinking none of us expected the win. That's for certain.
For sure.
And I guess the one thing that probably disappointed me the most was just that first half. I think I expected us to maybe not win, but I didn't expect that performance that I saw out there. And it was just the embarrassingness around how it all played out. You can lose a final. That is fine. It's not ideal, but you can cop it. And like I said, we
Mm-hmm.
didn't expect to beat Brisbane because of the form, because of all the injuries. My issue is to put in that effort, and that is across the board. Coaching, players, every part of this club, to put in that effort that we did on Saturday night. To not be able to put a score on the board until 4 minutes to go in the second quarter, that's just not good enough. We didn't even look like scoring. It wasn't just that we hadn't even kicked it behind. We couldn't get the ball 30 meters out to even get a chance. We could not get close. And I just don't understand how a professional side can do that. That's beyond me. And I think the thing that I'm kind of reflecting on now that just, it probably hurts more than anything else is, as a Carlton supporter, you almost expect what you saw out there to a degree. When it happened, when I was sitting there watching it, when I saw the score 60-0, I wasn't necessarily shocked or surprised that it happened, because this is kind of the Carlton that we know. The jokes come out as it's playing out that only Carlton could do this. We're the only team that could break this ridiculous record, because that's what we've seen our whole lives. And you know that this is kind of something these boys are capable of. Was not some sort of, anomaly. If I can't even say that. Anomaly is the word I wanted to say. I'm absolutely rattled.
It's early. It's early in Melbourne, I know.
It is. Recording is about 6:30 a.m. myself, so we could get the time zones going. Brain hasn't officially woken up, but they're a side that you look at the opposite of it. We go 5-6 goals up, and you can't trust us to hold a lead. They're not a team you can feel truly confident at any stage. And that performance on Saturday was just an unheralded disaster on all fronts. And maybe you can call this overreacting, Lockie. You can call it being a bit over dramatic, but I'm just a bit sick of this football club just finding different ways to disappoint me, to embarrass itself. We become the laughing stock again for a week. And it's just that disappointing nature of opposition fans, clubs, even our own supporters, you and me. We've grown to expect what we saw on the weekend of Carlton. And I'm just trying to ask them, when are we going to finally grow up and change, Lockie?
Yeah, you make some super valid points. And the part where I have to check myself and take my own responsibility is exactly what you said. We haven't played anything that truly resembled good quality footy in 2 months. So I got swept up in the names that were coming back in. I got swept up in the Doc storyline. I got swept up with TDK coming back, Chera's coming back, all these good things. So why was I so shocked? Really?
But surely even with the lack of form, underdone players, that's not scoreless with 4 minutes to go in the second quarter.
No team ever should be doing that. I'm definitely not saying that. That was the worst viewing of Carlton that I've had in 5 years.
Yeah. So look, we're going to get into the nitty gritty of all of this, but I want to know from you, Lockie, and I want to know from those watching on YouTube, those listening in audio form. So leave your comments in the comments below and head over to the socials at Navy Blue Corner. But Lockie, what was your kind of viewing experience and thoughts through the first and second quarter? Because in that second half, we were starting to win some momentum back and save face. In the end, it was the second closest, losing margin out of all the finals on the weekend, which is crazy when you think about it. Clearly, Brisbane, put the cue in the rack. They weren't as concerned with the margin by the end of the game, which sort of flattered everything that we put out there. But that first half, just take me through how you were feeling and the whole journey.
Yeah, so I was watching this one at a South London pub. A few baggers in the room, which was nice. We were getting around each other in the pre-game, getting excited. More Brisbane Lions fans there than I would have liked to see.
Interesting.
Who definitely were riling us up throughout the day as well, which got a little heated at times, which you love to see. I rewatched the game before this just to get a bit of perspective again, and I don't know if you agree, but the first 10 minutes, I was like, it's not excellent, but I can see something here.
Yeah.
and then it just fell apart. And you can talk about 8 different things that went horribly that led to all that, offensively and defensively.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. It was strange, and I still have this opinion, and maybe everyone can call me out as incredibly delusional and just incorrect. I even had some choice words for one of my best mates who's a Brisbane Lions supporter. I just wanted to get his perspective on this because I actually, for the performance that was out there, the fact that it became 60-0, they absolutely smashed us. I didn't think Brisbane played that well. I would love, Brisbane didn't necessarily, and we'll get into it, do anything different. They weren't playing that special. Even in that first quarter, we were down, but I thought we just need to get ourselves back in this, whatever it takes, get that pressure back up, win it at the coalface, and we're not out of this. We played poor, but Brisbane didn't do anything to really hurt us. Second quarter clearly went away from us, but I feel like that was more us not being able to move the ball more than it was really Brisbane stifling us. And maybe that's just my Carlton perspective in us v Brisbane. But I think any other team in the top 8 there plays Brisbane, I think it's a really close game because I just didn't think that Brisbane really played that well of a game. But I'm happy to be proven wrong. I just thought we were that bad.
Yeah, I don't have a strong take on that. On my replay watch, I was very much honing in on the Navy jerseys, which made it an unpleasant watch.
And I think that's why I was even more maybe frustrated because I thought if you put in the effort, this is a game you can win. I think any other team in that top 8 plays us, it's almost a 200-point deficit. That's probably where I'm seeing this. But let's dive into the main issues of this game and probably the biggest one that everyone's been talking about. It was the biggest topic leading into this game, biggest topic as soon as that final siren sounded, and that is around the team selection, around the match committee. Your favorite, Lockie. And I think many believe that game was lost there at the selection table. And after the result, it was pretty easy to say that was the clear reason. And I understand why there was so much outrage with what happened and the result that transpired. So before we do dive into the specifics of it all, there was this mentality from almost everyone I saw before this game saying, go for it, go all in, bring back the best players. We don't want to have these questions after the game of what could have been if we didn't play them. Weirdly, as soon as we lose it, we shouldn't have played everyone. I just want to know what your perspective was before the game and then after the game around who we should have played and should we have brought all these guys in.
I love this. I think this is a good thing to discuss because I was definitely in that mindset that you're talking about. Bring the guys back. People say they don't like the idea of using Doc as an emotional boost for the team. I did like that, and I wanted the big names out there. If I was going to say that the game was lost at selection, then I would be arguing that it's because we didn't have it's the players that were injured that I would want to come in. I think you could make a really fair case for why Binns, Lord, or Moya earned a spot based on their performances that got us into the finals. Happy to hear that argument. Chincotta is the only one that I'm like was fit and should have been in the team.
Yeah.
The place that I want to take this is a convo that you would not expect me to do because I never talk about this topic. I want to understand what fitness tests are taken to determine if a player is fit. Because I want someone to tell me how Durden was fit.
Yep.
And how Doherty was probably fit.
I agree with you. I agree with you on this. And we've had a little bit of this discussion previously, but never really delved into it. There's almost he's fit to play, and this is the thing, we don't necessarily know what the fitness test is, but okay, he got through the drills, he got through all the running, physically, he could do everything we needed. If it's, a shoulder, there was enough mobility from whatever test that they're doing, that's all fine. But there's being fit and then there's being match fit and match ready, that sharpness. And that's kind of where I sat with it, I agreed with you and like many, saying we need to go out there and bring our best team. I don't think if we play guys like Binns and Moya and the team we played in the last 2 weeks of the season, we're not going to get anywhere close to Brisbane. It's probably going to be the same result that we saw, if not worse. However, there was still a few players that we brought in that I thought were very, very interesting when they got called upon. And I just didn't think it was the right way to go about it. And I was on record as saying I wouldn't have played Doherty. But I think the reasons of it's fine to pass the fitness test. It's fine to be ready. I love the story. I love the spark it might give you. And maybe that's what we need. But this guy has not played actual game, VFL, anything all season. Can you bring a player in? Is he match sharp enough to give you the output better than a Jackson Binns could have?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that. I don't know. But in the end, Doherty was fine. But it just, what further message does that send? Have you sort of read into any of that kind of narrative after this game Chera hasn't played in a long time. Form wasn't amazing. Doherty hasn't played at all. Bringing those kind of players in, even DeConing to a degree, these guys that were out for a lot longer compared to, your Williams, Mackay, McGovern were pretty easy to bring in because they only missed a couple of weeks and they've played large chunks of this season. The other few that had missed a lot longer, and then, we were heralding guys like Lord, guys like, Binns, playing a bit of a role for us throughout the last few weeks, bringing the energy, being the reason we had a bit of a spark in those last 2 games that we hadn't seen for 2 months. Do you think it sends a bad message to the rest of the playing group that as soon as these guys are kind of okay, we've just thrown them straight back in?
I don't have a good answer for that. Yeah, that's a really hard thing to try and get in the 4 walls on, because a lot like I started this topic with, I don't understand, and nor should I understand, what these players did to be right for selection. And maybe that whatever the tests or whatever we're doing is not fit for purpose. And maybe everybody felt that, maybe every single person was like, yeah, like Jez is looking good and he's ready to go. He didn't look good. That's not the right player. I don't want this to be at me thinking about the players. It's the club in general. How is Durden playing? He can't lay his arms around anyone with that shoulder. Like, it's crazy to me that Chincotta is not playing. I know they're not the same position, but Durden, it was like there was 17 players out there for me when Durden was on, and it's not his fault. I don't think it's the broader club.
No, I kind of agree. And then you've got, to go individual players a little bit more, but like, Jesse Motlop hasn't been in great form either. I understand, always goes out. We maybe don't have a lot of other options in that small forward role, but why are we continuing to play guys that are out of form and maybe not showing enough? Why do we then bring in guys that are underdone and haven't shown enough? And that's probably my issue around the team selection. I was fine with Zach Williams. I was fine with Harry. I was fine with McGovern. TDK included in the 23. Let's just say that for now, because I want to talk about the sub in depth as almost the next topic. But those guys, I can understand 100% why you bring them in structurally and for certain components. The Doherty and Chera ones were my issues, particularly Chera. In the midfield was working the best it had in 2 months with a guy like, Cooper Lord in there and everything around it. Did it need Chera? Did it need a guy that, even when he has played this season, hasn't been good? I love Chera. Last season, he was incredible for us when flying. My issue around the match committee, this happened when we played Richmond, and it's something we go back to as a fan base and think, is this where our season came undone? Hey, Chera's good to go, Cottrell's good to go, bring him straight back in with no form, with no prep, when the team was playing well, playing the best it had all season, just beaten Geelong. Now all of a sudden we're making these changes for guys that maybe haven't earned the right to come back in. We've seemingly done that again and got the same result. It's kind of almost no wonder why we didn't perform on the weekend.
Yeah, I'm glad we're aligned on our thinking on those players. Exactly right. Like, that's why the TDK discussion is an interesting one, because he's just so obviously so pivotal to our structure and the way that we play, that it's like, for me, I can get him out there. Yeah, if he can't run out the whole game, put him in the goal square, whatever. But Doherty and Chero, they're just not those players right now for us, and we can fill those gaps better.
I agree. And Doherty's, at least, we've been talking the last few weeks on needing a bit of a spark, needing something. So we'll play some of the kids to get that, debutante energy. And I can understand from the sentimental component of a Sam Doherty and us selecting him for those reasons. And maybe on the training park, he's absolutely flying and he's looking better than half the squad. So you say, in every drill we're doing in the match sim, this guy's dominating. Well, he has to play. But I'm just, if I'm, and we'll get to the, guy like Matt Kennedy a little bit later, but if I'm Kennedy, if I'm Carroll, if I'm Lord, Chincotta in particular, if I'm those guys that have had to make way for a guy that hasn't played or really shown anything in a match sense, I'm absolutely livid. And I'm concerned about that message that it gets sent from match committee that's almost been there all year. And it's why us fans, every time there is team selection, jump online and are very angry and very vocal on it, because we see a clear issue that we're reading between the lines of team changes going, hey, I don't think this is the right move. And then we watch the game on the weekend. It's not the right move. And now we're going, am I a genius? Should I be running the club? So I understand why there is that frustration and why we think we know better, because we ask these questions and then it plays out and we're correct. So let's jump into the biggest one. De Koning as sub. It caused outrage when it was announced. I couldn't believe it myself. What were your thoughts
I didn't think
on
it was
the decision when it happened, and I guess the whole fallout around the decision in making De Koning our starting sub?
Yeah, I didn't think it was real when somebody at the pub mentioned it to me. It just didn't. I didn't see that coming at all, to be honest. Yeah, I don't want to be making like hindsight calls like you mentioned. Like I don't think that's a good way for me to do the analysis. But I'm going to, and say, for me, why couldn't it have been reversed? Why couldn't TDK start? And if he's absolutely gassed and giving us nothing in the third quarter, then sub him off.
I can't answer that question because I could not agree more. I was baffled in the press conference from Vossi when he was almost asked about this, and he said, "There's two." Well, we had two options here. It was either he doesn't play, or well, he can only play a bit of the game, so is the sub. And it's like, is everyone at this football club incredibly dumb? Are we scared to question Vossi and say,
Are we sure those are our two options?
I think there could be more options, Vossi. He could start, and we could sub him off later. It was
if things are going poorly, which maybe they don't. And he obviously wasn't 100%. But
and the funny thing is, in this, if the reasoning why they didn't want to start him as sub was, well, if he can't play out the game, but there's another injury, and now we've got this guy who can't play out the game, then we want someone fresh as the sub. But then if De Koning's the sub and you don't trust him to get through a game, and the whole point is he's meant to be there as your tactical sub and use it tactically rather than use it because there's an injury, then he's not the right sub. So the whole thing made no sense for me.
Yeah.
I was very much of the opinion, if De Koning was at all good to play, that you're going to select him at all, he has to start. And you make an adjustment. If he's cooked at halftime, you sub him out, or like you're saying, fuck it, play him one out in the goal square. We are much better off with him being out there, standing in the goal square, than him not being out there at all. And you could see it in the way that we sort of set up, and the lack of stopping Brisbane's marking, particularly in their defense, to launch out. We needed that extra tall. You could see it as clear as day.
Yeah.
I understand then why Vossi made the sub so early. It was clear we needed a change. I'm just baffled that he didn't start. And I'm so frustrated that no one really grilled him in the presser saying, why didn't you start him? You brought him on when the game was gone. It's immediately he made an impact when he came on. What if you had started him and then made a move later? Why didn't you do that? What was the worst thing that could have happened then? And how was that any worse than going down 60-0?
Totally agree. And with the strategy and game plan that we were going in with, why would it have been then so surprising that we were getting outmarked in that way?
Yeah.
Like with Andrews down there and with Pitternet going up against McInerney in one-on-ones, like it was like the writing was on the wall that was going to happen. Kicking the ball on Durden's head with a defender on him. This is always going to happen with the way that we were going to play.
Are we the only club ever that started a ruckman as our sub? And in one of the most pivotal moments of our season decided to reinvent the wheel with the sub? The whole match committee has been an issue for years under multiple different regimes. And it's just very frustrating that it's kind of reared its head again in the most critical moment. They've selected really underdone players in Chera and Doherty. You could maybe give them a pass for one of those. You throw Durden into that as well. It's maybe missing in this discussion as a guy who's at least been out there playing but clearly not fit. And then the whole sub debacle, the flow-on effect from that, Lockie, was, of course, the man who got subbed out. And if there's any positive in this, I love that the fans and the whole AFL community were completely aligned on the feelings of this. So what were your makings of Kennedy being the one that was subbed out? And God, I tell you what, there's no wonder Vossi retreated to the coach's box with the glares Big Matty Kennedy was giving on the bench throughout the rest of that game.
I just don't understand why. I don't even know how to talk about this topic, to be honest. I mean, I already spoke about them, but I just don't understand what we're expecting to get out of Durden and Motlop right now in the roles that they play. But whatever it is, I'm so confident that Kennedy would have done it better, whatever it is.
Across the board, anything you ask this guy to do, and that's what's been almost reiterated everywhere after this game, was you have asked Matt Kennedy to play every single role that is possible to play at this football club. He's been in the ruck. He's been a midfielder. You've thrown him down back. You've thrown him down forward as a small. He's played as a
every game
forward.
this season.
Played every single game. At any chance Vossi seems to get, he's the sub. He's out. And it's happened again. I'm perplexed. And probably the bigger issue on top of this is I don't get what they're not seeing in Matt Kennedy as a midfielder to be playing him in there ahead of a guy like Adam Chera. Is it that they're scared that we're too big and too slow? I disagree with that. I think he's one of our better clearance players. Why not try it? Is it worse when we're getting battered and not working with Chera being underdone? Why was Chera not subbed out when he clearly was nowhere near it? Doherty was nowhere near it and looked sloppy to start the game. Built into it a little bit, but I'd still say we're getting more out of Kennedy on a wing, halfback in the forward line. Durden, Motlop, Fantasia on the weekend as well. There's so many players that you could have made a move on ahead of Matt Kennedy. And I think that's something that maybe this is being, again, over dramatic, overreacting to it all, but this is where you can almost definitely lose the player. And that's why it's come out, that a lot of fans are saying, wouldn't surprise me if he's had enough because of this. Because every time this season he's not playing his preferred position. He's the first one to have to move out of the midfield, first one to have to play a different role and seems to perform wherever you put him. And then the biggest game of our season, we go, nah, you're subbed. I'm baffled by it all, Lockie. I don't understand. I don't understand it.
I don't think those comments are overreacting. I think we're all human and things like that can have an effect on guys. I wouldn't be shocked if there's ramifications for him.
And do you think it, like I said, with dropping some of the guys that were maybe showing a little bit of performance in the last couple of weeks, does it send a message to the rest of the team at all? Is that something that can set the squad off when you see your teammate like Kennedy that's been asked so much of him, seems to perform when he does it, and then that's the reward he gets? Because you're trying to, like, the thing that strikes me is Cookie's words when he came to the club is, culture's all about what you reward everywhere. That's what leadership is. That's what's culture. What you reward, that's it.
Yeah.
That flows through the club. Not rewarding a guy like Kennedy for what he's done. Does that help culture? I don't think it does. So I'm worried that those little, when there's so many little things like that that are kind of spread throughout the season, does that lead to a little bit of a downfall in certain areas?
I feel more strongly about that than I do, say, dropping the rookies.
Yeah.
Because I think, like I said earlier, if someone last week really strongly felt that Binns and Lord should be playing over some of these guys, then I think you can make that argument really well. But I think there's also a place for earning that more than just two senior games. The Kennedy one resonates more, and let's just hope that the messaging internally is super strong about why that was, or there's something we're not privy to, hopefully.
Do you think that there is a sense around Voss, and that, not to say he's necessarily coaching for his career, but his finals matters. He wins this game. There's no question marks potentially going into next season for a while about Vossi. Lose it in this way, and now there's still question marks on him tactically. And next season, there's going to be a lot of pressure if we don't start to perform early, knowing that it's been very up and down throughout his tenure. Do you think that this is Vossi saying, I need my best players out there who I believe are the best because I need wins? And if I'm going to go down with the ship selfishly, whether it's best for the team, whether it's best for that's best for me. And that's what I want. I want Chera out there because that's the ship I'm willing to go down on. I would rather lose with a guy that I believe in Chera than an unknown product in Lord or Binns. And is that the right way to go about it?
Yeah, it's an interesting take. I mean, so if things were reversed, and let's say that the rookies all played and the exact same result happened, like a 5-goal loss, do you think we'd be critical the other way? Surely we would be.
Who would be the players that wouldn't have played that you didn't select?
I guess. Yeah, I guess.
That would probably be my caveat to it all. If it was
Chera,
Doc, and I don't know who you'd make the third one, but if it was those two, I probably wouldn't be as upset because in my mind, at least, and this is my selfish opinion, I wouldn't have played Chera and Doherty. I was on record before going into this that I wouldn't have. So I probably wouldn't have been as upset. I guess that's all I can kind of say on that matter. Totally. But I completely understand where you're coming from in this, because we probably would have. There's always going to, no matter how this played out with any decision, as soon as the result doesn't go your way and it happens in this manner, you immediately say, well, you should have done this. It's very easy. But I think in this case, there are some glaring things that we called out before the game started. So when they play out like this, it's very easy to go back to those.
I think maybe what I should have addressed in your question there maybe is a good segue into future episodes that we do, where my feeling is that, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but your focus may be more around the list and the players being where the majority of improvement can come from. I don't know what to put the words in your mouth, but for me, at least, I'm thinking, at least for me, I'm putting more of my emphasis on coaching as being where we see the improvement next year, rather than the full list of players.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely think it's both. Definitely think.
Of course, I think everyone thinks.
I think you do as well. And I think this is the perfect segue to get into the coaching, because this is kind of something that was a little bit of preparation, match committee, coaching, game plan, team selection, all of it. And that is maybe talking about Chin Cotter, talking a bit about Zorko, because this whole matchup sums up everything wrong about our season in the game, in that I'm baffled Chin Cotter didn't play. Now, I will put my hand up and say that I didn't want him, and I said this on the preview, I didn't want him playing a shutdown role on Zorko, because I want us to be proactive. I want us to be backing ourselves in. Clearly have a plan for Zorko and how you're going to shut that down. But I wanted Chin Cotter in the back line on Charlie Cameron, on their smalls. But then worst case, if Zorko gets off the chain, you can pull the trigger, get Chin Cotter there, shut it down. That won't affect too much else, because Ollie Hollands, Doherty can play that extra in defense. We've got enough sort of small defenders to cover that, hence the plan we went into the game with. But I'm shocked that they didn't even play Chin Cotter, considering I thought his form was still pretty good. But then it looked like we didn't even have a plan for Zorko. There was no semblance of a defensive strategy. Eventually, we get Ollie Hollands on him. To his credit, shuts him down. The flow and effect of that means Zach Williams goes down in defense, and Jesus Christ, that wasn't great either. So I guess my kind of question for you is, why on earth wasn't Chin Cotter selected? And why does it seem like we did not have a plan for one of their most influential players and ball movers from the back? We know that's our Brisbane. Love to spread, love to play. They didn't have, obviously, Coleman out there. So it was all through Zorko. That's how their sort of second half of the season has started to improve. Why do we not shut him down and force maybe a guy like Darcy Wilmot to have to step up and be that? Do you have any potential answers or these thoughts on that, Lockie?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned before about the guys that didn't play that could have come in, I definitely understand why the rookies weren't in there, and I backed that. The Chin Cotter one, same as you. It just didn't. Just doesn't make sense to me still. I can't really put the logic there, because either of the playing him at either end has its benefits in this sense. The way I'll answer your question about dealing with Zorko was, I feel like Vossi was alluding to the fact that there was a plan that just didn't work. On watching the replay, I have absolutely no idea what to tell you that was, because that man was just in paddocks.
Yeah. And it was really annoying to hear then in the press conference, Vossi even mentioned that, they were planning all week to stop Brisbane's marking. Did we? What on earth were we trying? Because what I saw on the weekend didn't look like that. He says it was down to execution, but when you look at matchups, when you look at who was playing on Zorko, Fantasia, Durden's on him for a little bit, everyone's rotating on him. Was that ever going to be, you can say you planned for it, but if you planned shit to start with, which I think you and I could immediately say, and we're not coaches. And so I'm happy to say we're ignorant to this and we're wrong. But if you were to say everyone that lined up on the day, who would you line up on Zorko? I definitely would not be saying Fantasia and Durden will get the job done. So why did Vossi think that was the plan? Particularly when you've got Chin Cotter, when you can play him down back and be a lockdown, considering their smalls hurt us. And he's been probably our best and most clinical shutdown small defender. He's a direct ball user, loves to get the ball under his arm and run, something we need in our back half. If you chuck him down forward, he brings the Fogarty-esque pressure that we've missed since he's been out injured. Can play a shutdown role. He's the versatile player. At least make him the sub if you need to. I much would have rathered De Koning start and then we move Chin Cotter in as like, okay, you need to go on there and shut someone down or play a role anywhere, much like a Matt Kennedy can play anywhere. It's another baffling decision that plays out, and now we're here having to question it for the whole off season now.
It's hard having these conversations when I feel like most often I can see the other side. The other perspective, but I can't on one like this. I just don't understand how he was not in the team over a handful of guys.
Yeah, so I guess more on the big topic that I think I had the most notes on heading into this episode, which is preparation, coaching, and game plan. I guess, probably the thing that frustrated me the most around this whole game as well was that, as I said at the start of this episode, Didn't think Brisbane were that good. I don't think they've had an amazing season compared to their best. And most importantly, in this game, they did not do anything special. They did not do anything different that we didn't expect. They played the exact same way they've played all season. There were no surprises when the teams lined up in that first and second quarter that got us 60-0 with at almost halftime, about to set a record of the only team that's ever gone scoreless in the history of AFL VFL finals at halftime. And I think much like the Hawthorn game, they did what we expected. Hawthorn, when they smashed us, didn't reinvent the wheel. They played how we imagined they should have played. So why are we unable to prepare and anticipate it? What's the problem there? And how can we fix this? Is this a coaching issue? Is there problems higher in the, football department that is not getting the best out of it? Why are we not able to seemingly prepare for this? Because we couldn't shut down Brisbane. And for the viewer at home is probably thinking, holy shit, are Brisbane doing something different that Carlton didn't expect? Is this why it's so bad? That's where I am really, really angry on the club as a whole in this football department around the planning and preparation, because it's been a problem for longer than just this game.
Yep, I agree. This is a hard topic for me to talk on because you could pick any of 10 things to talk about that went poorly. I don't even know where to go with this, to be honest. Do you have what would you zone in on to start with?
I guess you can just start probably in coaching and game plan. What are the problems that you're seeing around this? Because you were mentioning there that you felt it was a bit more of a coaching issue. That's where you're seeing the biggest improvement. So I'm not asking you to solve it, because we're not AFL coaches. It's difficult for us to come in here and say, this is the game plan that we need to do that'll win the flag. This is where you should be moving this player. And I understand then criticizing it without bringing solutions is a whole nother kettle of fish, but we're just fans at the end of the day. And that's what we're kind of here to do. We're here to critique. So what are you seeing that are the problems that maybe need solving in the off season that happened in this game, but have clearly happened for a much longer period?
Yeah, I mean, like I said at the start, I feel like I'm jumping around with my thoughts, and I haven't prefaced it well. So when I'm thinking about next season, I fully still believe that this group, healthy with the right coaching, is a contending team. I also said that I'm starting to think that there isn't anything that we could have done with this group of players to win this game. And I don't know, I don't know if I've ever said that on this podcast almost, but with Durden and Motlop and the guys that weren't 100%, I don't know how you fix these things. They're my caveats to then say, for one, the defensive zone that we were setting up. I don't understand it, because the way that holes would open up with Brisbane not doing anything, the way that Joe Danaher will float into space and the seas part for him to take an uncontested mark, it was inexplicable. I don't understand the strategy around that defensive setup.
This is probably you've nailed on one of the hardest things for me to discuss, because I don't know where the blame lies in this one. I put this under my players topic and probably more than coaching, but it is both, in the sense of the defensive structure was, again, horrific. Players constantly not tracking runs. They're manning the wrong space. There was one moment where I was screaming at the TV like an absolute nuffy, where Brisbane have the ball probably like 70, 80 out, and all game they were just chipping through us. And I am yelling at Durden, basically just saying, what are you doing? You are in no space right now. You are not in the dangerous space. You need to be 5 meters back and to the right. Because right now, Motlop is half guarding the space you're meant to be in, which has created a hole out the back because you're both in the wrong spot. And then As I'm
Yes.
yelling this, they chipped it straight over. I can't remember who took the mark, but someone just takes a mark, 40 out, beautiful, another shot on goal, easy. And so my issue with this, and I'll probably at the moment lay this a little more on the players, because look, it's either, and it's really both, but it's either the coaches are teaching the worst defensive system in the AFL, or the players are the dumbest I've ever seen. Or it's both. Because it happened in the Hawthorn game. Players manning dumb space. Either they're being coached it to a degree, but even then, if you're on the field and you're smart enough as a footballer, and your coach tells you to stand here, and I'm standing there, but I see a fucking gap behind me, and I'm seeing another player out of position that's causing other things, you adapt. You move. You go, fuck what Vossi's saying right now. I know this ball is going to go there. I'm taking 2 steps back and manning where I think I should man. So I'm putting a bit of this on the players and work rate and footy smarts, because how many times can the players be absolved of all blame in this and it just go back to coaching? There's enough that I'm still upset on coaching to go at, but the team defense and tracking and work rate and pressure, the pressure rating and what they dished out in the first quarter, first half, is not what a team should bring final-wise. Vossi can't bring the energy out on the field. He can't lay the fucking tackles. Mate, he's the only one that does. He's tackling would-be assailants out of here, out of bloody stolen BMWs. Like, how come the rest of the team that go out there can't bring that pressure? So defense and team defense, I'm putting a lot on the players and their execution. But to go to your point in this discussion, if it is going wrong on field, to put it back on the coaches, what are you doing to fix it? Why are you not forcing guys like Motlop to either not play if they're not up to the structure? Because it's been weeks and weeks and weeks where to single him out, and I like Motlop. I think he can clearly still be a really good player. I'm not just meaning to say it's all his fault. It's just someone I've seen do it quite often. If he's not tracking runs, if he's not in the right space, why select him? Make a statement. Be aggressive as a football club. Like we're lauding, the whole AFL's lauding a guy like Sam Mitchell, who earlier in the season got criticized for yelling at his players at quarter time when they were seemingly doing okay because he was setting standards. And now look at him. Why don't we seem to be doing that? I guess, where are your thoughts around the issues around team defense deeper, and how much, I guess, players can be to blame in this as well?
Yeah, it's a really hard one. I like the way that you articulated it. And I'm definitely not trying to, I don't want people to come away from this as going, wow, Lockie wants Motlop and Durden delisted, because I still believe in both of them. But like on watching the replay, it felt like they were just the culprits so often of being those guys in no space, or in no man's land, as you put it. And again, then it's really hard for me to say, well, if those guys are constantly being the ones in no man's land, then is that because of the directive being unclear? And I'm just so, I said it before and I'll say it again. I don't understand what we're expecting from them in this team. And, I feel like there's been a few kind of like through lines for this podcast from the start. One has been the rucks and the second ruck. Who should the second ruck be? We've always been wondering this. And another thing I feel like constantly comes up is how many small forwards should be in this team and how many is too many. And I just don't understand how, like, what does a good game for all, like, Durden, Motlop, and Fantasia all look like? When is there a game where all three of them do their job right? And I can't even articulate to you what that is. Yeah. So it's causing defensive problems and it's causing offensive ones as well.
No, and I love that you bring that up. That's another big issue I have around the coaching, and that's where I'm putting a lot to blame in. And this is maybe more season review territory, but it's the same problems every single year. And I'm just going to say under Vossi, because even though it's been there for longer, but this whole podcast, the same problems when we started this podcast. If we could have started, when we started this whole thing, write down your top 10 issues that Carlton need to fix right now to win a premiership, and all the question marks you have, they're all still there. It's all the same problems. being able to defend and defend transition, defend kick-ins, being able to move the ball, being able to continually apply that pressure and have that mental buy-in. Who's the second
Slow
ruck?
starts.
Who is the small forward? Who's going to be the other target inside 50? Where are we getting the pace in the midfield? Where's that dynamic player? How are we doing? Like every single thing. What's the game plan? What's the brand?
2020.
It's the same things, and it has not been overcome this whole time. And that is where the deep-seated frustration really lies for me when I look at this game. And yes, we made finals. That's something positive, but no one really cares at the end of the season where you finish if it doesn't help you for next season if you weren't the team that won the flag. And right now we're immediately kind of casting our minds to what 2025 could look like. And when you don't finish with any sense of momentum, it is very hard to get positive and optimistic about it. And going back to I guess your coaching deficiency in the team defense, I think there's something that does need to be said for as much as I am in that 50-50 mold of I want to blame the players because I want them to have some responsibility in this. You're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. And Vossi's going to be the one, and the assistant coaches are going to be the ones that their jobs go before this playing list. That's just how it works. You can't sort of trade out 20 blokes that aren't working. So it's up to them to be able to fix this, really.
Yes.
So I want to talk a bit about game plan a little further. I touched on this in the Hawthorn review that I did by myself, so I haven't really got your thoughts on it as much, but it's reared its head again. And that is, does our game plan focus, too much on winning the contest and not enough on ball movement? Because when I'm looking at the best teams that are playing AFL football right now, you can throw Hawthorn, GWS into it, throw them all. Feels like they're prioritizing ball movement, the turnover play. When they've got possession, what are they doing with it? Feels like our whole thing is contest and pressure, winning that ball at the coalface and that being it, rather than what the fuck do we do when we have the ball? How much of an issue do you think is our game plan and not being what any other team is dishing up right now?
I would say that this is the topic that I feel least knowledgeable about making strong assertions with this. So I need to do this in the way of asking you questions. Do you think that with the current list that we have, we could do that well? Or is it, if we wanted to go after that, then that's we need to make that decision, and then that's a work in progress? Because the way that I think about it, and maybe this is wrong, is Vossi came in 3 years ago, saw this group, and this is the strategy that we're going to do with these players.
That's a really good question. I do like how you have worded that, because it's everything to give like the shittest answer back at you. I think when you do take over any club, you need to look at the players that you have and say, well, I may have had my plan A. This is how I want to play. This is my brand of football. Then I look at the players and I go, can't really execute that 100%. So you start to mold it around the players. Yes. But I think first and foremost, you need to have a system that you think can win in 2024. And the big worry is I don't know how many other teams out there right now are playing our brand of football.
Yes.
And that can be fine if it works. But when it doesn't always work, when it isn't something that for a whole season seems to be working, and that's where I'm landing on it at this time right now in, God, when it works, it's amazing.
Yeah.
But it hasn't worked for a full season. We're getting half a season of this peaking and then dropping off either side of it. So what about that isn't right? And I could be wrong in this sense, but I'm very much in the vein of, if we're so after this high pressure, we have to be at the peak pressure rating for a whole game of football and win the ball at every single contest to win a game of football. I don't think that's sustainable for 4 quarters across 24 game regular season and then how many finals?
Agree.
So what are we doing about that? Why is every other team more focused on how they move the ball? Contest and pressure, for as much as Voss and co want to talk about that, that's not a game plan. I said this in the Hawthorn review. That's the bare minimum to play AFL football. Being strong in the contest, winning the ball, and bringing pressure. That's like under 10's first thing I teach you. Win the ball and tackle. Why is that our ethos? Every team has contest and pressure. That shouldn't be our main source. Now, as far as what players do we have and could they execute a more run and gun turnover game? Well, if that's how we need to play to win games of AFL football, and you knew that from the start, I think there's a way you should have at the beginning of this tinkered with the list to mold it more towards that while still playing to your strengths. I think completely building your game plan around this and then almost being too stubborn in, well, we've got big inside balls, so let's just make that our game plan when we know it kind of doesn't work. That's my issue. We should have been proactive in knowing we've got big talls, we've got big gun midfielders. Our drafting and trade strategy to fix this list and make it perfect is we need run and skill everywhere else. If the inside midfielders are there, the key forwards are there, the key defenders are there, everyone else needs to be fast and be able to kick the ball. And then you can play around the big units. The fact that we haven't done that, I think, is that big issue. And right now, even with that, with the list that's out there playing, if you were to snap your fingers and give them a different game plan, which obviously takes time, it's going to take a year or 2 years to really nail it. I think there's still more you could be doing to focus on ball in hand. This is how we control the game, because that's going to take way less energy than having to win every critical contest, to have to win the ball off tackling every single time. If you can set up defensively, like I guess, Brisbane did on the weekend, where they're just manning space, not having to move, taking the intercept, and then they control the football. There's more in that than using all your energy up in the hardest parts of this game. If that answers your question at all.
It does. It does to a degree. God, I feel like I'm losing steam in talking about this, because all I can think about right now, and this is what we do with this podcast.
Yeah.
Like we're so in the moment of what we just saw. I can't imagine the team on the weekend playing any other way, because some notes that I wrote down about that part where it fell apart, like the zone, like the static thing that we were doing had so many holes, but then we were slow to react to the turnovers anyway. So we weren't defending the turnover well either. And then offensively, it seemed like there was a number of times where we tried to go corridor and do exciting things. And every time we did it, it was the wrong time to do it.
Yes. Is that coaching, or are the players just dumb? And that's the annoying thing. It feels like this is the topic we've gone over every 6 months on this podcast. It's everything looks bad. The whole system does not seem to be there. It's almost relying on everything to be perfect and the individual players taking over. We need Harry to take a big mark. We need Cripper to run through everyone. And then even players executing things and their decision-making is poor. And that's where I'm probably at the moment. And this can change. This is the thing. You have such a poor end to a season. You have one of the worst games of the year. The media dive on it. Opposition supporters dive on it. And you get in that really negative headspace that we're in collectively right now.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to look at it all and think that it is just going to get better when it's been like this for some time. And so many facets seem to be wrong. It feels like the players are half the issue. Mentally, there's an issue. Coaching-wise, there's an issue. It's so difficult to fix right now.
Yeah, it's true. I'm looking forward to us delving into season review things for these topics.
And I think my last kind of point really on the big coaching thing is I think the fan base and everyone often talk about we need a plan B. When things don't work, We need to adjust. It feels like we're sometimes slow to adjust. That's one of Vossi's issues. Is he tactically there? Need to be quicker and better at adjusting in game. In my opinion, we shouldn't have to adjust, Lockie. We shouldn't have to have a plan B necessarily, because our plan A should be the thing that works. The system should be backed in every single time. It seems like we're often adjusting too much to what's happening week in, week out. We go in with a plan, it doesn't work, we change it. Next week, we go in with a different plan to fix the plan that didn't work last week, and then that doesn't work and we shift it. Why are we not? This is our A, this is what we're doing. We back this in 100% until it fucking works. Because we believe this works. We believe the players can execute, and we will drill this into you until you lock it down. And if you can't play it, I'll bring in someone else that can. Feels like we're too often needing to adjust, and it's not good enough. The fact that our plan A fails so much that we need to adjust is just a massive indictment on the whole coaching group and the system that they've set up right now.
God, I'm struggling so much to get out of this just one game, and even this past period of time, because I did the worst thing ever after this game, because I needed a pick me up, and I watched a bunch of the Geelong, I think it was round 15 game back. Ian, it wasn't that long ago.
No. So
take from that what you will, I guess.
What went wrong? And that's the insane thing that we're here thinking, how can a team be so good at stages and so bad in other stages? If we were just what we saw on the weekend for a whole season, there you go. Oh. It's horrific. You figure out a way to fix it. I don't know if it's easier or harder to fix the ups and downs that this squad and coaching group and the whole club seem to have. It's absolutely bizarre. And that's maybe where I'll go and pivot towards talking a little bit about the players, in that, as bad as the coaching was, as bad as the preparation, the team selection was, I think the players can't be, dissolved of any blame, because they have to execute, and they've failed to bring the effort in this contest, which is the bare minimum. Over the last 2 months, we have said effort, pressure has not been good enough. And you look at that Geelong game when it worked perfectly, the movement, the working for each other, the being an option, someone to take a mark, and there's 4 guys peeling off. Now at the moment, everyone's getting sucked in. They don't seem to know what they're doing when they win the ball. Do I go quick into the midfield? Do I hold it up? Now there's no options. No one's creating leading targets for me. Is it just down to the players? Is it coaching? I think some of it needs to be the players, because the effort and intensity it's abhorrent at the moment. And when we play bad, it's not there. Why can't this team come out in a final when you've got the opportunity? This is what we wanted so bad the last few years. You got it last year. You've got another opportunity again. You're playing against the team that kicked you out of finals last year, ruined your premiership dreams. You should be chomping at the bit to go out there and get it. Guys like, Chera and Doherty should be like, oh my God, here we go. I thought I wasn't going to get this opportunity this season. Let's go. And I just didn't see that. So why can't we bring that consistent effort as a group? Do you have any thoughts? At least I know, not. Again, it's hard to solve it. I'm not asking you to do that, but why is it so bad, Lockie? I don't know.
Nah, I don't have it, because we've said it with every loss that we've had since that Geelong game. It's the same stuff.
Yeah. And I think far too often the basics we don't execute. We don't hold tackles. We don't hit easy targets. We're not clean picking the ball up from the ground. We don't work to cut off leading lanes. We don't work to create options, just simple stuff. I don't know why that's not there. I don't know what's not able to bring that. Is the activation that the coaching group are bringing not good enough? But at the end of the day, how many times can these lads have these hard conversations with each other until they sort it out, harden up, and figure out how to be the mentality monsters that we're striving to be? So many people and fans will say, oh, they need another Camp Kerno. They shouldn't need another one. We had it. That should have been it. How do you lose it? You know, I don't know. I'm kind of at the point with everything. And again, who knows? It's only a few days after the game. The more the season settles, I'll be more optimistic eventually. But when focusing in on the players, if they're not able to handle it mentally, if they're too nice, they can't handle the pressure, they can't handle Vossi eyeballing them, telling them they're not good enough, trying to get more out of them, if they need the nice words, if they need a little cuddle after the game, then sorry, boys. We want to win premierships. We want to be a football club that only accepts the highest standard. If you can't do that, if you can't set that example, we've just got to move you on. And it probably concerns me from what's happening inside the club, players, coaches, higher administrators, if they're not able to make these hard calls. And if they're just going to sit here and we're going to go into season 2025 with pretty much the same things, maybe they'll get rid of an assistant coach. Maybe it'll just be Brad Lloyd that moves on and that's sort of it. I think I agree with you and I don't think we're that far off. And it doesn't need wholesale, we gut the whole list and start again. But there needs to be some sort of brutal, ruthless change that we maybe don't see coming, because you can't keep doing the same thing and just expecting the Dirt and Motlop and those players that we expect to take that next step are just going to do it. You need to be proactive and make sure it happens.
Yeah, no, I'm in complete agreement. I don't have anything to add. I hope we do see that.
I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, but what did you make of Vossi going back to the coach's box?
Oh, I haven't thought about it. I noticed it, and I said it to the people that I was with that I can't remember ever seeing that, like, or at least for a long, or at least for a good period. Yeah, it can't have been this year. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, his first season was in the coach's box. Last season, he sort of started to jump down and be on the bench to pass those messages on a lot more.
Yeah,
it is very intriguing. I wonder how much of it is, and this is all just speculation, clearly, but the talk is that Ash Hanson's the tactics guy. He's up in the box, seeing everything, being that more game day coach, and Vossi's then the communicator, being that leader with the players on the bench.
Yep.
Is it Vossi? Is he going, I don't like what I'm seeing, Ash? I'm the coach here. I've had enough. I'm going to go up there and take the reins because this isn't good enough.
Maybe so.
Is it the other way? Is he saying, you need to take more of the reins here, Ash? I need you to come down here and communicate and make it better for me. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
It was very interesting that it happened.
It is fascinating.
It'd be very fascinating to see how that plays out next year and the dynamics around it. But we're in a position where going into next season, we're going to need to make changes in the coaching ranks. There needs to be more fresh ideas, more tactics, better nous, better preparation, new eyes on things, because the current group aren't getting it done. And we know Vossi's strength isn't his tactics. That's fine. It doesn't need to be. There's plenty of coaches in world sport that their thing is they're the motivator, and you bring the guys around them that sort out those specific tactics. But we need to get that right, or this isn't going to work well. And right now, I don't think we've got that tactical support around Voss to win a flag. I think that's evident.
Yeah, sure. Again, I feel like we are sharing so much of the same sentiment today. But it is interesting. That is something that I would love to know. Getting the four walls to know what that was. It was a little symbolic.
Yeah, they need us in the press conference to ask some questions.
No.
To be very negative on this, which we kind of have been already.
Oh, you're going to go negative now for a bit?
Yeah, I think we've been pretty positive to kick things
the
off.
negative segment.
But
here we go.
This is very overreactive, but I'm not necessarily in that mindset. It's more me, devil's advocating, posing the question. Because why not? But, big pivotal moment for this club was round 23, losing to Collingwood. And it was that we had that conversation of, will this make the team? Will it break the team? So I got asked the question now around this as we kind of start to move towards next season and the review of the season, which will be out in a couple of weeks for sure. Is this the kind of loss, Lockie, and enter the season that does destroy an iteration of a playing group and a club? Because I think you've seen in previous years, a team have a really bad final series. They fall away after a brutal loss, and then they're just not the same after it. They can't recapture it. Things fall away for whatever reasons. Add on to that the fact that I think making adjustments to all of this is going to be difficult. Voss is pretty much locked in as the coach, so he can't just necessarily pull that trigger, whether that is the right thing to do or not. How many assistants can you move on? How quickly, even if you do that, can you shift the game plan and make that cohesive and make that all work? Looking at the playing list, the cap's tight, list spots are tight. So how many changes can you really make there on the fly? How many players are even available that would fix this? Adjusting what we have, what we've built with the age demographic, ready to go. Stars are in their second half of their prime now. They're not about to hit their peak. They're peaking and then starting to go over that. So with that all, are you starting to at all get a little bit worried on where that might leave us next season and whether this kind of end is the start of the downfall rather than just a middle blip?
No, I'm not going to allow myself to think that way. I still think that we're going to be top 4 next season. I think we're going to be improving. I'd be lying if I said that there was not moments in the second quarter where that was coming into my mind, where it was going to be some kind of historic event that was going to unfold, which it didn't turn out to be. So I can, like with many of the things I've said in this podcast, if someone wants to make the argument that it is, then I think there's validity in that. But I'm not going to spend the next 6 months before opening round or round 1 having that mindset, because I don't want to be a Carlton fan like that.
And that's the difficult thing to balance up. A lot of people will be of the mindset that if you're hopeful, if you just go into next season as a fan and say everything's going to be better, that you're part of the problem. I've never understood that, because as fans, we're meant to get swept up in it. When you start to win a few games, we're the ones that are allowed to get ahead of ourselves and go, we're winning the flag, because what effect does that have on anything? If you're a good football club, you don't listen to, us two getting carried away. You don't listen to us two getting annoyed. You do what you think you should do based on the evidence in front of you. That's your decision. So for us to be then trying to get optimistic and expecting us to be a good football side, that's what a fan's all about. You build yourself hope every single year. You can be critical, you can do whatever you want, but I'm going to be like you. I'm going to be, by the start of next season, we'll be up and about and we'll be looking towards it all. But I think at this stage, I'm in fix-it mode. What are the issues? Yeah. How can we try and solve it? Which I think is still fair as well.
I think it's
still a few things I want to cover off, but we've done so much. I want to make sure we haven't answered all the listener questions already. So let's go to Griller Corner.
Yes, sir.
We chucked them out on Instagram. I know there was a good few ones there, and also on Twitter at Navy Blue Corner. So if you ever have a question for us, we posted out there on the socials. Links are in the description in the show notes. You can always just sling us a DM if you've got a question, and we'll jot it down and chuck it in the episode. Lockie, what are the big questions that I am thrown in the hot seat to answer this week?
In true Navy Blue Corner fashion, of course, we've addressed a bunch of these, but I'll call a couple of them out. So James was wondering about, do you guys have any logical ideas about TDK as the sub, and why sub out Kennedy ahead of Motlop, Dirt and Fantasia? We've shared our thoughts on that.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, please.
I can understand to a degree. I still think it's wrong why they did it. They didn't think De Koning could play out a whole game. So they thought, let's make sure he's fresh and ready to go. They would have believed we would have been closer. So an impact of De Koning like we saw in the second half would have been great if we were close. It just doesn't make sense, I guess, from everyone's perspective, why they didn't start him earlier. The Kennedy one, if I'm Voss, it's probably, I've backed everyone else in the midfield. I'm bringing on an extra tall. If he's meant to be that sort of third marking option in the forward line, then that's now De Koning / Pitto. So the role I had for Kennedy is now obsolete, if that's the thinking. But again, like we've touched on, I just think that's the wrong call. And I think I would have moved someone else's magnet and let Kennedy take over that spot. But I can weirdly get what they did, but I still think it's wrong.
Yep. No, I'm in agreement with you. You would have seen this one. 15 likes on the reply from Ash Gallagher for this tweet. I don't know if you want to pull up in front of you because there's a bit going on here and maybe some different parts that you want to point out. But this deserves reading out, I think. So Ash has put together proposed off-field changes, of which there are 7. Jimmy Bartell for Diesel as footy director. Graham Wright for Brad Lloyd as footy manager. Get Justin Lepich in as the tactical senior assistant. Hansen to coach the forwards. Jordan Russell to coach the defense. The end of Aaron Hamill, your man. And then Voss to coach from the box.
Yep.
15 likes on that one from Ash.
It's interesting. It's hard to go into the names of those that they've suggested because I definitely need more time to think about other potential options and all of that and a lot more specifics. But Lockie, I'll still answer it in a roundabout way. Call me out if you want more information or anything more specific. But I think it's the end of Brad Lloyd. I am not using him as a scapegoat, but he's been there since 2018. He's overseeing the whole footy department. He's overseen coaching hirings that haven't worked out, the hirings of different personnel that hasn't worked, held on to personnel. He's meant to make everything run smoothly. Right now, we're needing to make changes again. Therefore, sorry, buddy, you've had your chance. Much like a Jack Russell, it's the sense in me of, look, he could be the best footy, manager, director of footy, whatever the hell his bloody role is. GM of footy, there is in the world. But I'm not there to see it every day. I can only see the output. So from my perspective, I'm not seeing the results. I want fresh eyes on it. Goodbye. Now, Diesel as footy director, I don't know what he does. I thought it was a weird hiring at the start. Can you get someone better? Probably. Is Jimmy Bartell that guy? Could not tell you. I don't like the idea of getting someone that is in the media. I would be, if he's the guy for whatever reason, because he was at GWS and I guess GWS are going pretty well and you think that he was a key part in that, I'd be saying you can't be on bloody Footy Furnace or whatever that rubbish show is that has got churned out at about 12 p.m. every night because no one bloody watches it. You're not doing the media show. You're at our football club or nothing. That's what I'd be saying to him. But why not try and get someone in to different roles? I am all for that this season. My probably issue with a few of the others is around, and we'll probably have this discussion in depth a lot more in the postseason content when we talk about, I think it's Rob Innes that we got from Sydney to take over, Andrew Russell, and that in whoever we bring into any role, I am wary of us going for the name that is the current so-called best in the business, because that feels like what Carlton's done every single year throughout its modern history. And I don't think it's ever worked. Oh, Pagan's the best. Malthouse is the best. This person's Jack Russell's the best.
Yeah.
They were the best. Why can't we be the club that gets the next best? The one that you haven't heard of, that isn't the name value, but in 2 seasons' time, every single club's going, we need to coach him. He's the one. Why are we constantly looking at what has worked and then trying to get that now? Like Cookie's another one. Like, he could be amazing. He could be doing everything right. But again, we've gone for someone that was the best. They're not in their peak. They're just passing their best. So I want to get the one that's in their peak, that's going to be the one that can take us forward rather than constantly looking at the past at what has worked. I want to be proactive football club. And that's what I hope we're being a little bit in the shrewd hire of Sydney's guy. And so when I'm looking at, replacing Lloyd, maybe getting another senior assistant in, is that Lepic? I don't know who that is. I'd have to do some research in it. I like the idea of bringing in someone that doesn't want to be head coach, or maybe that was a head coach, that is a really good tactics guy. I'll throw out a name rather than me saying this is who I want, because I don't know. But if a guy like, the typewriter segment that we love, Lockie, an Adam Simpson type, someone who isn't going to be another head coach, but it has experience, knows success to a degree, and he's big on tactics, whoever that is, can then be there, because Ash Hansen in the next couple of years is probably going to move on. That way, if Vossi is not your tactics guy, you've got your head of tactics that's not going to be a football coach anytime soon to work with that next guy coming through in your Ash Hansen, the next best. So you're always kind of replacing his protege that they're building. As far as the rest, I don't think you can move Ash Hansen down to a forward coach, considering that'd be a demotion, and he's already turned down the West Coast job, which would be a promotion. I don't think you can do that to him. But can you bring more support in? Of course. Hamill probably makes way. Don't think it was a great hire at the time. Is what it is. He's probably going to go, I assume. Seems the easy, logical choice. Jordan Russell, no idea. Maybe he's a good forward coach. I don't know. I can't tell you. There's
forward line's been working so well this season, so yeah, for sure.
But Ash Hansen couldn't get the forward line working. So what is the problem in the breakdown there? Like that's where I'm looking at it. But totally, I love the thought. This is the shit I love. So Ash could not love this more. Getting it all.
Great tweet, Ash.
That is what I want to be looking into in the next month or so. Trying to look at what are the positions throughout the club we want to shift. And who can we bring in? I love the juicy discussion. Maybe those are the right guys. I'll get back to you on the specifics of that.
Oh, but I love it. You addressed it brilliantly. And I'll wrap it up with one final one, because we've still got more to discuss. But there was lots of people referencing Kennedy in their tweets. So I'll finish with our good mate Sal. If Kennedy asked for a trade, would we blame him? Oh, no. It takes me back, Ian. Takes me back to 2020. You wanted him gone. You were off the Kennedy bandwagon. It's one of my earliest memories of the podcast.
Oh, yeah. Interesting. It wasn't like, let's just get this straight out. I wasn't like, let's kill the bloke. I never want to see him again. He's dog shit. It was more, what had he done? What had he done at that stage? We needed a list
5 years ago.
So why not? And then he started playing a lot better football, a lot more consistent football, and he's actually been a decent player. I like Matt Kennedy.
You've redeemed yourself.
I would not begrudge him if he wanted to leave, not necessarily just for the fact of him getting subbed, but for probably 2 years in a row, he's been the first midfielder that's moved out. He's had to play other roles. Your football career is short, Lockie. To take the Carlton hat off, if you want to play as a midfielder, like how old is Matt Kennedy? Let's have a look this up. Is he like 26?
He's got to be younger than us.
27. There you go.
There you go.
What? He's got another 3, 4, 5 years left. He probably wants to play midfield. He doesn't want to play as a fucking second ruck. So there's a chance that he leaves because of that. And is that the worst thing for our list? If we're desperate for spots, it's hard. We've got a lot of inside midfielders. If Vossi and co rate, Hewitt higher, they prefer to go Walshy and Chera in those roles. We've got Cooper Lord that maybe plays that Kennedy-esque role in the midfield, coming through as a bit more youth.
Yeah.
You can probably, to be harsh on Kennedy, maybe that's the lever you pull to bring in an extra draft pick to bring someone else in. Does moving on a midfielder in an area that we've got almost too many of the same type allow you to bring in X player that fits a role you don't have on the squad? So I'm not saying let's get rid of him, but it seems like Voss doesn't rate him as that starter. It allows you to fit a role that we probably need elsewhere. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that happens in the off-season. But if he stays, I love him. He plays a role anywhere you want him to. He's a good player to have on the list. You could do with a lot more Matt Kennedy character players that give everything wherever they are asked to play.
Mate, you've been on fire today. I love how you answered that. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Beautiful. So that's the Grill the Corner segment. I'll be quick with the votes. Lockie, very tough one. Last votes for the year. Maybe the second and third spot in our votes that isn't Paddy Cripps, who ran away with this award completely. Have to do the tallying soon. We'll do our awards show in a couple of weeks. But who have you given your votes to for the last time this season?
I'll give Cripple one. I'll let him grow that lead a bit. George 3. I felt like he just did everything that we could have asked. And then 2, don't know if this guy has got any votes this season until now. The man that I thought did my favorite inside 50 of the whole match.
Oh,
Lewis Young.
Oh, yes, good. It is the right man. Yes, no, I've gone very similar. I didn't give Cripper any votes. Probably should have. He was trying his hardest, but maybe that's just the standards he's set for himself. And I wanted to give someone else votes for once. So George Hewitt gets my 1 for plugging away in that midfield amazingly. Should never have been dropped. Big issue that caused half of this. 2, clearly Lewis Young. We haven't expected a lot of this man. And I think what he's done since coming back into that defense has been great. It's been perfect. Yes. He's done everything you need him to do. And it maybe makes one of the defensive depth spots on our list short up going into next season. At least
I agree.
To continue with as we go towards the off season. And then the 3 votes I gave to Nick Newman. I thought he was someone that was strong defensively, tried to get a lot going for us with ball in hand and with faces in hand. He was loving a bit of the biff there late. I always love that. Someone doing that. And I love Nick Newman. And particularly in that first half, when no one was doing anything and half the team was absolutely poor, to be very kind, I thought Nick Newman, Hewitt, Lewis Young, Ollie Hollands, and Cripps were the only ones that could really put their hands up and say that they were giving it their all. So big shout out to Nick Newman. Love what he brings.
Nice one.
And sucked in Lockie Neal. That's what you get for running at a bloke. What did you think was going to happen? You can't just go up to a bloke at 100 miles an hour and expect him to just cop it. So love your noodles.
And an honourable mention to TDK because
God, we looked different when he was in there. Far out.
The impact that he can have with no fitness, playing 2 quarters, silly.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to have him
Best
back.
ruckman in the league
next year. All Australian, lock him in. So, look, last thing I wanted to cover before we wrap this up, because there's going to be, we could still go for another 2 hours, but I have to get to work soon. And Lockie needs to go to bed because the time zones here. So we'll have plenty of content left. We've got season review. We can keep talking about any little topic that you want. If you want a little mini episode based around something in particular, we can do it. List analysis, trade preview, trade review, draft preview, draft review. There's going to be so much that we can do. Maybe some fun, more guess the 22s or anything like that. A couple more drafts. They're always a lot of fun as well. So let us know if you've got any ideas you want us to cover. Fun little games. Drop them in the comments because we're going to need some cheering up in the off season. But the last thing I wanted to cover, Lockie, not sure if you're across it, but have you at all read or seen Luke Sayers' message to the members at all that was out recently?
No, that has not come across me. So fill me in.
Yes. Well, I wanted to read a little bit of it. There's been, I mean, some people hate it, some people like it. There was just a little bit of this that I thought was very...
I'll give my immediate reaction.
Interesting. So I want to know your thoughts on this. This is verbatim. He says, we either embrace a consistent commitment to elite behavior across all levels of this football club, or we will get left behind. I cannot spell it out any clearer than that. We know when at our best we are good enough, and I believe our best was absolutely good enough this year, but we need to perform at the level we are capable of over a long period of time, not in patches. Over the coming weeks and months, we will address the areas that we've fallen short in and be relentless in making sure these areas will meet the standards of excellence that this football club now expects. True unity is being able to look one another in the eye, being honest in our performance, ensuring that we move forward with clarity. Further evidence of our inconsistency was our inability to field a regular team on the park for the entire year. Only once in 24 rounds, round 12 versus Port Adelaide, were we able to name an unchanged lineup. In round 24 against the Saints, we went into our most crucial game of the year with over 40% of our playing list on the injury list. That isn't sustainable for success. We need to be better. Thoughts?
I like it.
It was interesting. For once in these statements, it felt like there was a little bit of accountability there that maybe hasn't been in the wording. And look, they're words. I understand that. Maybe they're all just false platitudes and they're just saying what they think we want to hear we know we need to get better, and so we're going to make all the moves for it, and then they end up just getting rid of two people, and it hasn't been really addressed. The core issues haven't been addressed, but it's potentially the first time that I've really seen them go a bit hard, and it looks like Sayers and co aren't happy with how things are going, which maybe they haven't, for me, it's the subtext in the wording of this and maybe what's been omitted, in that saying they're not happy in how inconsistent it's been. And they believe that there are areas that aren't up to high performance across the board. So I'm going to be very interested to see, particularly that line in true unities, being able to look one another in the eye, be honest, and ensure that we move forward. And just after he said that, we need to be relentless in these areas, that makes me kind of think, I'm going to look you in the eyes, and if you can't take it, get the fuck out of here. I don't know if that's how it is. Maybe it's worded in more of a way of they're being safe and saying it's the unity. It's because we're going to just talk to you and then we're going to go with the same guys next year. But I hope it is a more relentless, let's make big decisions that maybe aren't going to be favorable. Maybe we move on people that fans love. I don't care what it is, but let's make a statement and let's live by it. My only concern, I would say, and this is kind of my last question I want to almost end on to a degree, is are you worried there by that closing paragraph talking about the injuries, that there's too much focus and too much blame at this football club on blaming the injuries and the lack of continuity on the issues at this club, and saying that that's the main reason we've moved on Russell, so now things are going to be good and we're not going to address other areas? Is that at any concern? That's almost the scapegoat in this season?
I feel like I need to address that last bit in two different parts.
Go for it.
Do I think that the key reason that our season went like this is because of injuries and lack of continuity? Yes, I really, really do. Do I think that one hiring change will just fix that? Of course not. But that message on first listen does resonate with me, because it resonates with how I've felt that this season has gone. And we spoke about it a little bit last week, but you and I reflected on, was there times in the past where tough decisions could have been made and they weren't because there was enough reason to gloss over them? And maybe this is the opportunity for those decisions to be made, right?
Yeah.
I don't know Luke personally. I don't know Luke at all, but I know that he is a lifelong Carlton supporter, and I know that there would be nothing that he would want more than to win a premiership under his tenure. So I could see now, with 1 year to go in that, this being the time that moves are made.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think there is clearly a lot of blame that does have to go on injuries. The fact that Vossi and co will be very frustrated that they have not been able to select their best team and have their best consistent team all year. Like, that does not give them the best chance. Like, Vossi's first thing that he'd probably say to deflect a bit of blame on the season would be like, how am I meant to win a flag if I don't have my best team out there? How can I build any cohesion? How can I evolve the game plan if I have to change my centre half back every 2 weeks? If I have to change my forward line because of an injury, I can't shift things because I'm having to continually bring in different players and get them up to speed and change roles around. I can get that. My concern in that statement, talking about being ruthless and needing to make hard calls, is that because of precedent and my hurt from the football club, is that they're just going to say, well, Brad Lloyd's been there for a while, so he'll go. Easy call. We'll move on from one assistant, maybe a Hamill, because he's been there and you can use him as a scapegoat. Easy call. And, Russell was the easy call. And that's all we really need to do. Easy. Solved. Let's blame the injuries as the main cause. Sell that to the members and off we go. Because I think there's still so many questions, like we've classified throughout this whole episode, that there's still question marks on aspects of the list and the players' mentality and their ability to execute. The game plan clearly is an issue. Sometimes the messaging from the club and Vossi isn't ideal for everyone. There's issues with match committee and selection. What are they rewarding? Can the list management make the hard calls and bring in what we need? Or, there's been question marks on them overspending on players that haven't been fit for purpose or going for too many risky players in that sense. Now again, it's Dan Houston that's bringing another big name to fix things up when that might not be the best way to solve this issue. There's executive issues. What's the head of football doing, Brad Lloyd, throughout this that never seems to be out there speaking? Why is a lot of the footballing department absolved of this and it's just Vossi and the players? How's the leadership from the club? What's Cookie doing? What's Sayers doing? How are all of these people across the club, are they willing to make these brutal calls and get stuff done? So there's question marks everywhere. I just really hope it isn't coming straight down to the injuries. And the fact that seemed to be such a major paragraph at the end of this worries me. I felt like you didn't need to say that, and reiterating it makes it feel like it's a scapegoat. And I hope I'm wrong on that.
Interesting. Yeah, okay. Yep. I think we can agree to disagree on that.
Yeah.
Because most of the things, everything you said there, is very fair.
Yeah. But it's going to be something that we have to wait and see on. There is no, this is 100% what it'll be until we see it happen. So that's really going to wrap up this episode. It's been a tough one to get through, to talk about all these issues, because the more you talk about it, the more almost perplexed you are on how things became this way. We were sitting pretty second. Form was there. It's fallen away, and we weren't able to impact in September. Can we do it next year? Of course. But things need to change, and there needs to be some adjustments made. And we're going to go through it all in this off-season. Content doesn't stop. We'll be back with our season review episode with all our awards. Can't wait for it, along with everything else. As I said, if there's any show ideas, things you want us to cover, any sort of guess the 22s or anything like that, let us know in the comments. Let us know your thoughts on everything that we have covered throughout this. If you just need to vent, if you just want to talk about what is going on, leave it in the comments. Head over to the socials. We're always there to chat. Lockie, do you have anything else that you wanted to say before we wrap up our last review episode for 2024?
I just absolutely promise that the next time that you hear from us, I'm going to be my self. I'll be back next time.
Absolutely. So that is the episode. That is season 2024 wrapped up. Up the bloody baggers. See you guys next time.